All right, well, we're going to start with order of operations, and we're also going to review simplifying expressions, evaluating expressions, and then we'll do a little fraction review. So first of all, order of operations, you maybe have heard this referred to as PEMDAS, and sometimes people remember it by saying, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." And this tells you the order that you need to simplify an expression. So the first thing you want to do is evaluate any parentheses that you might have. Then you want to evaluate any exponents you might have. Then you'll look to see if you have any multiplication or division. If you have both, then you are going to evaluate them from the left to the right. So if you had division and then multiplication, you would do the division first and then the multiplication. And then the same thing with addition and subtraction, that would be the last thing you would do. And if you have both addition and subtraction in an expression, then you will work from left to right. So let's work through this example and see how it goes. Well, I have my parentheses, so I'm going to have to evaluate that first. So 5 plus 1 is 6. Well, I don't have any exponents, so I can skip that step, but I have multiplication and division. So this 2 parentheses 6 is really 2 times 6, and then divided by 4. So now since I have multiplication and division, I'm going to work from left to right. So I'm going to first evaluate the 2 times 6, which will give me 12. And now that I've done the multiplication, I can now do the division. 12 divided by 4 will give me a 3. And now I only have addition left. 3 plus 3 will give me 6. So this is a little bit different, but why don't you put the video on pause and see if you can come up with the answer on this one on your own. All right, let's see if you did it right. Did you get 3 for your answer? So another way to think of this one is the numerator is a grouping and the denominator is a grouping. So you could kind of rewrite it like this: 20 minus 5 in a group, and then divided by the denominator in a group, 2 times 3 minus 1. So now we have parentheses to evaluate. So 20 minus 5, I can evaluate that. That's 15. I still have to now evaluate my parentheses before I do anything else. But in this parentheses, I now have multiplication and subtraction. So I'm going to have to do the multiplication first. So I'll have 15 divided by, and then in parentheses, 6 minus 1. I still have to continue evaluating my parentheses. So 15 minus 5, divided by 5, which of course is 3. All right, let's talk a little bit about how to simplify an expression. So here you have now an expression that has some variables in it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to take the number that's outside and distribute it into the parentheses. So I'm going to take this 5 and multiply it by the 4x, which will give me a 20x. I'm going to take the 5 and I'm going to multiply it by the negative 2. Remember, you're always going to take the sign along with the number. So it's negative 2. So 5 times a negative 2 will give me a negative 10. And then I have to distribute this negative 3 into the second parentheses. So negative 3 times 2x will give me a negative 6x. And again, I'm going to take the sign with it. Negative 3 times 4 will give me a negative 12. Well, now I've gotten rid of all the parentheses, and all I have to do now is combine like terms. So I have a 20x and a negative 6x. Those are like terms. So if I combine those, I will get a 14x. And then I'm going to combine my numbers, negative 10 and negative 12, to get a negative 22. So the simplified expression would be 14x minus 22. Now let's look how you can evaluate expressions. Here I have an expression that has some x's and y's in it, and the problem would look sort of like this. Evaluate when x equals 2 and y equals 3. So what this is saying is everywhere you see x, instead of putting an x, put a 2, and everywhere you see a y, instead of put a y, put a negative 3. So let's go ahead and do the substitution first. So I have a 3, but now I have an x. So instead of putting an x, I'm going to put a -2. And I put it in parentheses because it'll help keep me straight, especially when I get to negatives. I'm going to subtract. Now I have a y, so I'm going to put in -3 instead of y. I'm going to open my parentheses and put a 2 in, but now I have an x. So I'm going to put in 2 for x. I have +3 and then -4. Now that I've substituted in all my numbers where my variables were, now it's back to just a PEMDAS problem where I have to evaluate the expression. So I'm going to start here with my parentheses. Again, in my parentheses, I have multiplication and addition. So I'm going to have to do the multiplication first. So 2 times 2 will give me a 4. But I still have to continue evaluating that parentheses. So 4 plus 3 will give me a 7. Well, now I really only have multiplication and subtraction left, so I'm going to do the multiplication first, working from left to right. So 3 times 2 would be 6. And now I have to multiply the -3 times the 7 to get a -21. But I still really do have multiplication in here because I have a negative times a negative, or a -1 times a -21. So that'll give me a positive. And now I have addition and subtraction. Again, I'm going to work from left to right. So 6 plus 21 will give me a 27. And then 27 minus 4 will give me a 23. So when in this expression, when x is 2 and y is -3, the expression will evaluate to 23. Now let's just do a quick little fraction review. Remember, when you're multiplying fractions, you're going to cross-reduce if you can, and then you multiply across. So in this case, I'm going to look at these two numbers, 9 and 3. I can both reduce those numbers both by 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. And then I'm going to look in the other direction, 8 and 4. Well, I can divide both of those numbers by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. And 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now that I've done all of my reducing, I'm just simply going to multiply straight across. 3 times 2 is 6, and 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer is 6 over 1, which of course can simply be reduced to 6. And now let's review how we divide fractions. If you remember, you flip the second fraction, and then you change your division to multiplication. So here's a division problem. I'm going to flip the second fraction, the 4/5, and make it 5/4. And I'm going to change my division symbol to a multiplication symbol. Well, now I just have a multiplication problem. So I'm going to do it just like the previous slide. I'm going to look at my diagonals and see if I can cross-reduce. Well, I can cross-reduce the 8 and the 4. They're both divisible by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 3 and 5 cannot be reduced, so I'll leave those alone. Now I'm just going to multiply across, and I'll get 10/3. So if you have any questions on any of this material, please email me, and I'll be happy to help you.